A parliamentary committee into the cost of living pressures facing Australians is being held in Western Sydney today. The committee will hear from industry groups and the community to see what should be done to tackle the crisis. Joining me now from the hearing in Warwick Park is Independent MP Dai. Thanks so much for your time. You speak to constituents each and every day. What is this committee likely to hear in terms of the problems and the likely solutions, Dai?
Look, Laura, thanks for having me on your program, first of all. And I'm here at the Warwick Holiday Inn in Warwick Farm. And it's really, first of all, I'm very grateful that the Senate Committee on the Cost of Living, chaired by Senator Jane Hume, has come out. I gather it's based on my request for the committee to come out outside of the Parliament, outside of Canberra, to actually get onto the ground and listen from the community perspectives in terms of the cost of living. And so far this morning, I've heard from obviously the local Chamber of Commerce, Liverpool and Cabramatta, talking about the increased cost in living in terms of electricity price rises, gas prices, in terms of housing affordability, the lack of housing, social housing, and obviously the impact of the petrol prices, and of course the push for electric vehicles in an area whereby majority of us drive petrol fuel cars. So I was just sitting in there and I had to step out to obviously speak with you, but I'm sure there's more coming towards the day. And I think one of the great things about this committee coming out here is that I'm able to bring some of our local community voices, and that the community, the Senate committee, can listen right from the grassroots and taking it back and hoping that obviously, everybody's asking for the government to look at solutions. Now, I don't know what the solutions are, but it is the role of the government to come up with solutions to address the cost of living crisis that I believe that has been experienced by every single Australian across the country. Of course, it's more heightened here in an area like Fowler, where we've got a large proportion of people on low incomes, and in our area, more than 50% of the population speak a language other than English. So. So it's an interesting morning, and I'm just very grateful that for the first time we have a Senate committee coming out here to Western Sydney and in Fowler.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's the first time, to be honest, but we've seen a few hints, if you like. We always see this before the budget is actually handed down. We saw earlier this week the government essentially saying, and look, I say this with the caveat that nothing's finalised in the budget yet, but when it came to job seeker, essentially, my understanding is the Treasurer and the government as a whole think it's actually too expensive for a 40% increase in this economic environment. Do you accept that?
Look, from my perspective, when the government talks about it's too expensive for the government to do something to assist ordinary working Australians to cope with the increase in cost of living at a time when they would spend $368 billion on a project such as AUKUS, for instance, they can find the money for something like that, then I think that the everyday Australians who are making it tough, doing it hard, trying to put food on the table, trying to get their kids to school, driving a petrol-fueled car, they need to look at that, where they spent their money and where, it just doesn't make sense. As a government, you've got to make sure that people's lives, you enable them to raise their family and provide them with, opportunities to thrive. And so they need to think where they're going to divide the pie.
Yeah. On that, because we know Lamito, it was an election promise by both sides of politics, to be honest. Liberal and Labor, they weren't going to be extended beyond this budget. That obviously affects lower middle income earners by design. It's in the name. But would you expect that to be replaced, perhaps not to the same quantum, but would you expect with no Lamito there would be some kind of direct payment to help these people out?
Oh, look, I think that they need to really think about the stage 3 tax cuts, and I think that they have to look at ways to support low and middle incomes. I mean, especially, the majority of Australians are on an average income of about probably $80,000, a year, and with the rising rental increase, the food prices increase. petrol has increased. The cost of everything has increased. So I can't, the government's responsibility to look at policies to make it easier for people to live and work in Australia. And I really urge the government to look at the stage 3 tax cut and making sure that communities like Fowler get some, benefit.
Just quickly on that, because the government has repeatedly ruled it out. Why can't the government do both? Because that was an election promise to deliver stage 3 tax cuts. Yes, it is at the higher end, but we often forget that stage 1 and 2 have already passed through the parliament and are enacted, and that was for lower income, those on a lower income. Surely you could give more help to lower middle income workers without taking stage 3 tax cuts away. There are other streams of revenue. Would that be acceptable to you?
Look, I'm not a treasurer. I'm not an economist.
Yeah.
All I know is that my community, people in this community on low to middle income are struggling with the cost of living in terms of rent rises, mortgage rates, interest rates going up. And that flow on the 10th increase of interest rate we have not seen the impact of that yet. It's still going to come out this year, I believe. And so therefore, if they can spend $368 billion on a program such as AUKUS, I am sure the government will find a way to ensure that low to middle income earners will be able to manage their families and provide for their families in the next few years.
Dai, enjoy that committee, I hope. That's the right term to use, enjoy, this morning.
It's going to be insightful. I hope it's going to be insightful. I know already some of the issues, but I hope that what the community will get from our community, the voices of Fowler and Western Sydney, will bring it back to Canberra, and that we can then shape policies that will obviously benefit middle income, low income families like people in Fowler.
Dai, thanks so much for your time as always.